Hello and welcome to the channel. For today's tutorial, I'll be sharing how to make this corset top with a sleeve. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments at the comment section. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always watching and supporting my channel. Please stick to the end of the video to get the full details. So going to my pattern paper, I've gone ahead and I've marked my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and from my waistline I added 4 inches for my length, for the front length of the top. So the next thing I did was just to draw my neckline, the standard neckline of 3 by 3 inches. So after that, I measured my shoulder, and at my shoulder I went down by 1 inch and I drew my shoulder slant. From my shoulder line, I placed and I marked my chest line. So to get your chest line is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So that's how to get your chest line, and I drew a straight line at that point. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place my tape, and I'm going to divide my armhole into 2. So at that point I'm going to go in by ½ inch and I'm going to draw my armhole curve. But before I draw my armhole curve, I'm going to place my measurement. I'm going to place my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to mark it at my chest line. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place my French curve, and I'm going to draw out my armhole curve at this point. After drawing my armhole curve, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my bust pan. So I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to mark 3.5. So mine is 7 divided by 2. I have 3.5, and I'm going to mark it at my bust point. I will mark it at the under bust point. I will mark it at the waistline, and I'll go ahead and I will extend it down to my top length. So after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and also place my tape at my chest line, and I'm also going to mark it also at my chest line. After marking the dots, I'm going to connect the dots, forming a straight line. So I've gone ahead and I've drawn the line. So at my chest line, I extended the line by 1.5 inch. So if you want your cup to start lower, you can just mark 1 inch. So I want mine to be up a bit so that it can cover the bust area. So after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my dart intake. So at my under bust, I'm just going to mark 1 inch at both sides. Going down to my waistline, I'm going to mark 1 inch at both sides. After marking that, I'm going to extend the dart down to my top length. So also at the top length, I'll be marking 1 inch dart intake at both sides. After marking the dart intake, I'm just going to place my rule, and I'm going to connect all the dots or all the marks that I've made from my under bust down to my top length. After marking it on one side, I'm going to place my rule, and I'm also going to connect it at the other side. So I'll use my marker so that the line will be very visible. I'll also mark out the other side, which I have marked already with my marker. So the next step I'm going to do is to draw out the cup area of the corset. So what I'm going to do is to place my French curve, and I'm going to connect the line from the bust to the under bust part. So if you don't have a French curve, you can also make use of a freehand sketch. So to avoid my lines from being faint, I'm just going to use a marker, and I'm going to connect it back to my under bust. After marking the other side of the cup, I'm going to place my French curve also at the other part, and I'm going to connect from my bust line to my under bust. So with this, we are done with the first part of the cup. Moving over to the second part of the cup. So I'm going to take my tape like so, and I will place it at my chest line and I'm going to go down by 1/2 inch. So this is optional if you want to reveal your cleavage. So from that 1/2 inch, I'm going to go in by 1/2 inch again. So this is where the cup will start from. So next step I'm going to take right now is to place my French curve touching my under bust and that line I marked. So from there I'm going to draw my cup. I'm going to connect from that new mark down to my under bust. After connecting my cup, I'll go ahead and outline that mark I made at that point. So as you can see right now, the cup is taking shape. So the next step I'm going to take is for my bust tightening at the upper part. So from that mark I made from my bust pan line, I'm going to measure 1 inch at both sides for bust tightening. After making that mark at that point, I'm just going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect it back to my under bust at both sides. So I'll go ahead and I will connect the lines just like I said earlier. And this is what I have after connecting the line. So I'll go ahead and I will take my marker and I'm going to outline it very well so that it will be very visible for you to see. After connecting the line, the next thing is to connect the line from that bust tightening down to my chest line, forming the cup on that side. So I'm just going to place my French curve and I'm going to connect the line. So you can as well use a freehand sketch at this point if you're good at it. So this is what I have after connecting the line. So the next is to work for the other side of the cup. So what I'll do is to place my tape and I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to measure the distance from my armhole to my bust circumference. So whatever I have at that point, I'll be dividing it into 2. So after dividing it into 2, I'm just going to mark it. I will share it into 2 equal parts and I will mark. So next thing from that point, I'm going to go down by 1/2 inch. So I'll place my tape at that point and I'm going to mark that 1/2 inch. So from that 1/2 inch, that's where my new chest line is and that's where I'll be connecting my cup from. Next, I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to draw a straight line from that 1/2 inch I came down with. So after drawing that line, the next thing I'm going to do is to draw my cup. So to draw my cup, I'm going to place my French curve touching that line and also touching my under bust. So once it touches that line, I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to draw a line from the new chest line down to my under bust. After connecting that part, the next thing you're going to do is from the bust tightening that you're going to extend it down to your chest line area. So with this, our cup is ready. So if you have any question pertaining anything on this corset, you can also leave your comment at the comment section. So next thing I'm going to do right now is to insert my body circumference. At my bust, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and I'm going to mark. So I'm going to be adding the dart intake I removed. So I'm just going to measure what I have there and I will mark. After adding that, I'm going to mark my sewing allowance. So for this particular tutorial, I'm not using much allowance, so you can use 1.5 or 2 inches. Going down to my under bust, I'm going to mark my under bust circumference divided by 4 and I'm going to mark the dart intake, which is 2 inches. After doing that, I'm going to mark my sewing allowance. Going down to the waistline, I'm going to mark the waist circumference divided by 4 inches. After marking the waist circumference, what I'll do next is to measure the dart intake, which is also 2 inches. So I'm just going to mark it. After marking that, I'm going to add the sewing allowance. Going down to the top length, I'm going to mark the hip circumference divided by 4. After marking that, I'm going to measure the dart intake at that point, and I'm going to mark it. After marking it, I'm going to add the sewing allowance. So don't be afraid if your hip is a bit wide, because after the pattern we are going to cut out that part. If you notice, the corset has a basque waistline. Going over to my pattern here again, the next thing I'll do is to connect all the lines that I have marked from my bust line to my under bust and down to my waistline. So I'm just going to use a marker to mark it out so that it will be very visible and not faint. So from the waistline, I'm going to connect it down to the hip, and I'm going to be making use of my French curve at this point. So like I said earlier, in case the hip part is a bit wide, we are not going to work entirely with the whole hip measurement. We are still going to cut out a basque shape. So from the waistline, I'm going to connect it down to the top length. So at this point, I'll be placing my French curve. So this point actually needs a French curve for you to get a really nice shape. So I'll just place it this way, and I'm going to draw the line connecting to the top length. With this, we are done drafting the front pattern. So I'll go ahead and number my curve. I'll number it as 1, 2. You can use A or B. Going down to the body of the corset, I'm just going to label C as center and S as side. So the next thing I'll be doing from here is to cut out the front pattern. So after doing that, we'll go ahead and we will draft the back pattern. So at this point, if you find this video very interesting and educative, please hit on the subscribe button, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share, and also leave your comments at the comment section. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always watching and supporting my channel. I really appreciate your support towards my channel. So let's get back to the drafting. So after cutting out, this is what I have for the front pattern. So going over to the back pattern, the first thing I did was to mark out my zipper allowance. So you can use any measurement of your choice. So afterwards, I marked my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waist. So from there, I marked my shoulder and I went down by 1 inch, which I drew my shoulder slant. From my shoulder slant, I marked my chest line. So to divide your chest line is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So I went ahead to draw my armhole curve. So going over to this back pattern, I'm going to make it very easy. So from here, what I'll do next is to mark my bust circumference from the zipper allowance. Watch where I placed my tape. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. So I'm not going to make use of a dart so that I can make this pattern very easy, and I'm going to mark my sewing allowance. Going down to my under bust, I'm going to mark my under bust circumference divided by 4 plus my sewing allowance. So you can as well insert your dart, make use of your dart, you're free to do that. So I just made this pattern to be very easy, especially for a beginner. So at my waistline, I marked my waist circumference plus my sewing allowance. So for my back pattern, my back length is going to stop at my waist. The front is a basque waistline, that's why I went down by 4 inches, and at the back I'm going to stop at the waist. So coming from my front waistline, at my chest line I went down by ½ inch. So for my back pattern also, I'm going to go down by ½ inch from my waistline. So I'm going to make that mark across my pattern. After making the mark across my pattern, I'm going to connect it with a ruler and I'm going to draw out the line. After drawing out the line, so this is where my back pattern will start from. After drawing out the line, the next thing I'm going to do is to connect the marks that I've made. From my under bust, I'm going to connect it down to my waistline. And from my bust line or my chest line, I'll connect it down to my under bust. So this is my back pattern and is ready. So next thing I'll do is to draw a line at my waistline to show where my back pattern stopped. So after drawing that line, the next thing I'm going to do is to get rid of puff at the back of my dress. If you notice, the back always has this bulginess. So to do that, I'm going to place my tape and I'll mark ½ inch. From that ½ inch I marked, I'm going to connect it to the upper part of my back pattern and I'm going to draw a line. So after drawing this line, my back pattern is ready. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to cut out my pattern. So I'm going to place my front and my back pattern together to show you what they look like. So this is what I have cut finally and I will be working with this. So I've gone ahead to place my pattern and cut out. So I added ½ inch at my pattern this way. So also at my lining, I ironed gum stay to it. So for the material you're working with, if your material is a bit light, you can go ahead and iron stay to it. So for my side pattern, this is what I have. I added ½ inch and I did not add ½ inch by the side because I've already added a sewing allowance, and I ironed gum stay to it. And from my bra cup area, I have already placed and cut out the pattern, and for the lining part also I ironed gum stay to it. So for the back also, at the lining piece I ironed gum stay to the lining, and for the cup also I cut out a wording. So for this wording I'm using a light wording, so I'm going to actually double my cup to get the effect that I want. So moving over to the sleeve, so this is what I have. I've already cut out my sleeve. So I went ahead to cut out 2 pieces for my sleeve. So measuring my sleeve, I have 16.5 on fold, so making it 33 inches. At the other sleeve, I'm also going to measure it to make sure I have the same thing. So I have 16.5 also. So I have, measuring it this way, I have 12. So in total I have 16.5 by 12 on fold. So opening up my sleeve, this is what I have. So at the upper part of the sleeve, I'll be folding it this way, and at the lower part also I'm going to fold it in this way. After folding it, I'm going to pass elastic through it and I'm going to stitch up the sides. I'm done with the sleeve. So in my next video I'll be showing you the joining and stitching of the corset dress. Please, if you find this video very interesting and educative, please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification button to get new updates from my channel whenever I post. And also leave your comments at the comment section, or any question you have pertaining this corset tutorial class. Thank you.